March of Hope, Clara's Fight for Fairness. In 1935, Clara worked long hours in the factory, her hands raw from stitching shoes. She was just 17, but the Great Depression had spared no one in their small town. One evening, after a particularly grueling shift, Clara gathered her fellow workers in the town square. "We deserve better," she said, her voice trembling but determined. The factory loomed over the town, a brick behemoth with smoke-belching chimneys. Mr. Harrison, the owner, cared only for profits, ignoring the workers' pleas for better conditions. Clara's father had worked in the factory until his health gave out. Now, Clara bore the burden of supporting her family, her dreams of education and a better life on hold. Many workers nodded in agreement, their faces lined with fatigue and frustration. But others were afraid. "Mr. Harrison will fire us all," one man warned, shaking his head. Clara knew the risks, but she couldn't stand by any longer. "We have to stand together," she insisted. "If we don't demand change, nothing will improve for any of us." Word of Clara's efforts reached Jack, a journalist known for his passionate stories about the plight of workers. He decided to cover the brewing movement in the small town. Jack arrived at the factory gates one morning, his notebook in hand. He was struck by the weary faces and the children working alongside their parents. He knew he had to help. Clara was surprised when Jack approached her. "I want to tell your story," he said. Clara hesitated but then nodded. She saw an ally in Jack, someone who could amplify their voices. Meanwhile, Officer Daniels patrolled the streets, torn between duty and sympathy. He'd grown up in the town and knew the hardships its people faced. Secretly, he supported Clara's cause. Mr. Harrison caught wind of the growing unrest. He called a meeting with his supervisors. "We must crush this rebellion," he barked. "I will not be dictated to by my workers." Clara and Jack spent evenings planning the march. They knew it wouldn't be easy. "We need to be peaceful but strong," Clara said. "Our resolve must be unbreakable." Flyers went up around town, calling for a Labor Day march. Some workers were excited, but others still feared the repercussions. Clara worked tirelessly to reassure them. On the morning of the march, Clara stood at the front of the crowd, her heart pounding. She looked around at the determined faces and knew they were ready to fight for their rights. The marchers began to walk, holding signs demanding better pay and safer working conditions. Jack took notes and photographs, determined to capture every moment of their struggle. As they approached the factory, they were met by a line of policemen. Officer Daniels stood among them, his face unreadable. Clara hoped he wouldn't stop them. Tensions rose as the marchers and police faced off. "We have a right to be heard," Clara shouted. Mr. Harrison watched from his office window, furious at the disruption. Suddenly, a rock flew through the air, smashing a factory window. Chaos erupted. Police waded into the crowd, batons swinging. Clara tried to maintain calm, but panic spread. Officer Daniels saw Clara struggling and moved to protect her. "Stay calm," he shouted to the crowd. He knew violence would only hurt their cause. Clara was grateful for his help. Jack captured the violence on film, knowing these images would tell a powerful story. Blood and sweat mixed in the street as the clash continued. The marchers refused to back down. Despite the chaos, Clara's voice rang out. "We won't be silenced," she cried. Her words galvanized the marchers, who linked arms and stood their ground against the police. The confrontation lasted for hours, but eventually, the marchers were pushed back. Clara fell to the ground, exhausted but unbroken. She knew they had made their point. Jack rushed to Clara's side. "We got what we needed," he said, showing her the photographs. Clara nodded, knowing that their struggle would now reach a wider audience. The next day, newspapers across the state featured Jack's story and photographs. The brutality of the confrontation shocked many and drew widespread support for the workers. Mr. Harrison could no longer ignore the public outcry. He called Clara to his office, his face grim. "You've made your point," he said. "Let's discuss your demands." Clara stood tall as she outlined their requests: fair wages, safe working conditions, and reasonable hours. Mr. Harrison listened, realizing he had little choice but to negotiate. Clara's victory sparked a wave of activism in other towns. Workers everywhere began organizing, inspired by the success of the small Midwestern Towns March. The negotiations were tough, but eventually, Mr. Harrison conceded to many of the workers' demands. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a significant step forward. News of the agreement spread through the town. The workers celebrated, their spirits lifted. Clara was hailed as a hero, her determination and courage inspiring everyone. Officer Daniels approached Clara after the celebration. "You did it," he said, a rare smile crossing his face. Clara thanked him for his support, knowing it had made a difference. Labor Day took on new meaning in the town. It was not just a day off work but a day to remember the power of unity and the importance of standing up for one's rights. Jack continued to write about the labor movement, his articles shedding light on the struggles of workers across the country. He and Clara remained close allies in the fight for justice. Clara became a prominent figure in the labor movement, traveling to speak at rallies and meetings. She never forgot her roots or the people who had stood with her. The factory, once a symbol of oppression, began to change. Working conditions improved, and the workers felt a newfound sense of pride and ownership in their jobs. Mr. Harrison, though begrudgingly, acknowledged the positive changes. Productivity increased, and the factory became a model for others, showing that fair treatment benefited everyone. Clara's family, once struggling, found new hope. Her younger siblings were able to attend school, and Clara herself began taking evening classes, chasing her dream of education. Clara often visited the town square, now a place of pride and memory. She would sit by the fountain, reflecting on how far they had come and the work still to be done. Jack's articles continued to draw attention. His latest piece highlighted Clara's ongoing efforts, painting her as a beacon of hope in a time of great uncertainty. At community gatherings, Clara was often asked to speak. She would tell the story of the march, reminding everyone of the importance of standing up for justice and equality. Officer Daniels, though still conflicted at times, found a new purpose. He worked to build trust between the police and the community, ensuring that such violence would not happen again. The town thrived, a testament to what could be achieved when people came together for a common cause. Clara's march had not only changed their town but had ripples far beyond. Children in the town grew up hearing stories of Clara's bravery. She became a legend, a symbol of what one person, with the support of many, could achieve against all odds. Clara's journey was far from over. She knew the fight for workers' rights was ongoing, and she remained committed to the cause, always ready to lend her voice to those in need. As the years passed, the town prospered. New businesses opened, and opportunities grew. The memory of the march and the changes it brought remained a source of pride. Clara kept in touch with Jack, who continued to write powerful stories. Their friendship, born in the struggle for justice, endured, a reminder of the power of collaboration. Each Labor Day, the town held a parade to commemorate the march. Clara would lead the procession, a living reminder of the day they had all stood up for their rights. Clara's influence extended beyond the town. She was invited to speak at national labor conferences, her story inspiring workers and leaders across the country. Despite the recognition, Clara remained humble. "It wasn't just me," she would say. "It was all of us, standing together." Her words resonated, encouraging others to take action. The town's history was preserved in a small museum. The centerpiece was a display dedicated to the march, with Jack's photographs and Clara's speeches capturing the spirit of the time. Clara often visited schools, talking to students about the importance of fairness and standing up for what is right. She hoped to inspire the next generation of activists. The factory, once a place of hardship, became a symbol of progress. Workers were treated with respect, and the community flourished, a testament to their collective strength. Clara's story spread far and wide, a beacon of hope during the difficult years of the Great Depression. She proved that even in the darkest times, change was possible. Jack published a book about the labor movement, dedicating it to Clara. "To the bravest person I know," he wrote. The book became a bestseller, spreading their message even further. As time passed, the town became known for its history of resilience and solidarity. Visitors came to learn about the march and the woman who had led it with such determination. Clara continued her advocacy work, always finding new causes to support. She believed deeply in the power of people coming together to make a difference. The spirit of the march lived on, inspiring new generations to stand up for their rights. Clara's legacy was one of courage, unity, and the belief that change was always possible. Each year, the town celebrated Clara's birthday with a festival. It was a day of joy and remembrance, honoring the woman who had changed their lives forever. Clara, now much older, would watch the festivities with a smile. She knew that the struggle for justice was never-ending, but she took comfort in seeing how far they had come. The town, once struggling, now thrived. Clara's march had sparked a revolution, proving that even in the hardest times, the power of collective action could bring about lasting change.